cover the sky. You got to get to work. Never asking why. Poison in the water. Cameras on the street. You're voting into power. Liars, killers and cheats.
Without freedom of thought, there can be no such thing as wisdom, and no such thing as public liberty without freedom of speech. Benjamin Franklin. Welcome to the Freedom is Dead, Long Live Freedom podcast. This series will connect dots that are found throughout time and space and that are exoteric and esoteric to show a civilization spanning agenda directed by a hidden cabal of elites. This episode, fittingly, is called Freedom, Fact or Fiction. First they came for the communists, but I wasn't a communist, so I didn't speak out. Then they came for the socialists and the trade unionists, but I was neither, so I didn't speak out. Then they came for the Jews, but I wasn't a Jew, so I didn't speak out. And when they came for me, there was no one left to speak out for me. Pastor Martin Niemöller, 1892-1984. We owe it to ourselves and to future generations to speak the truth and to fight for what is right. Cognitive dissonance is not an option. That the end of freedom was the birth of civilization appears to be a probable truth. It's significant to note that indigenous tribes didn't rush to join civilization. The Aborigine or the Native American had to be dragged kicking and screaming into our version of society. One of the reasons is that they believe that they know what freedom is, whereas people in the global civilization only know the illusion of freedom. Our civilization is guilty of genocide of indigenous peoples, as in killing millions of tribal people, but also the genocide has been cultural. This should prove that civilization is not the best social structure for the human being, because they have had to use violence to wrench the indigenous people away from their own societies and brainwash them into following our way. According to many ancient cultures, there's been many rises and falls of human civilization. Our story is just another cycle. Our story began 6,000 years ago, and it was centered primarily in the Near and Middle East. More specifically, it began in a place called Samaria. In today's world, Samaria lies in the southern part of Iraq. In fact, Iraq is named after an ancient city of Samaria called Uruk. Samaria is said to be the first human empire of this cycle. It's believed to have become a functioning empire as Taurus the bull ascended in the night sky to rule the heavens. The empire was constructed through the binding together of a group of city-states, through an organized religion centered around a pantheon of gods and goddesses. Each city was ostensibly ruled by a divine entity that had a familial connection to the other divine entities that ruled the other cities. Without this organized religion, there would not have been an empire. These divine personages were called the Anunnaki by the people of Sumeria. The Anunnaki literally means heaven, descend, earth. So those from the heavens who descended to the earth. As with all organized religion, the Anunnaki cannot be proven to have existed. But the stories did give a priesthood a fraudulent right to exist that allowed an acquisition of power over the people. It's the same in every religion. This unproven addition of the gods also created another powerful institution, namely the monarchy. Because the most powerful line of kings in Sumeria, the line of the King of Kings, gained authority through the claimed union of one of the gods, namely Enki, the Lord of the Earth, with a human woman, their offspring becoming the premier bloodline of the kings. The priesthood and the monarchy became the apex of the hierarchy of the society, both institutions ruling through fear. The priesthood would control the spiritual, claiming that if the people were not obedient to the gods' edicts, the gods would smite the transgressors, while the monarchy would control the material aspects of society and had the power of violence enforcement to demand obedience from the population. As the civilization grew over time and spread around the globe, more controlling institutions manifested, such as the legal system, education, finance, and of course the media. Civilization seemed to, and still does, wrap chains around the vast majority of the population within its grasp. Eventually, the kings and queens either had their heads chopped off or began to rule from behind a veil, and government, literally meaning rule of the mind, became the overt power in society. Over the last century, three main forms of government have existed, such as communism, fascism, and of course, democracy. Democracy was seen to be the most egalitarian, as it claimed that the government itself was representing the people's wishes. With the end of the traditional authoritarian communist and fascist systems, a merging of the three systems melded into one known as social democracy. And this is the system that's being pushed onto the globe at present. But does, or has, democracy ever represented the people's wishes? With what we know of the ruling elites, it's clear that if democracy did give people a say, it would not exist. Democracy itself is a massive lie. Due to the inclusion of massive amounts of money being involved in pushing candidates and their political parties, it must become clear that the choices for government still lies with a select few. In democracy, there are normally only 2 or 3 parties that have the necessary weight to reach the hallowed corridors of power. As they only have superficial differences, they keep the political discourse within a narrow bandwidth, and are the only ones that will be funded by banking and corporate interests. One party will have a socialist leaning, and another that has a more capitalist leaning, with a third, if that's a part of the recipe, promoting the centre position. As the three parties are only superficially different, they all follow the aim that has been set by a hidden group of social engineers. That's why we note that nothing really changes. Over the last few decades, though, even those slight differences are being ironed out, and so in reality, they are all acting out a political charade, devoid of any real choice in the direction a nation will travel. Isn't it interesting when you notice that so many political ideas and laws emerge in so many countries at one time? No, it's not the 100-monkey theory that's behind this phenomenon, but our governments are directed by secret society members that connect like a web around the world. Up until now, I've only talked about the exoteric vision of the ruling systems. But there is an occult, esoteric world that rarely directs our story. Throughout the corridors of power, the hidden hand directs and rules. This hidden hand uses a loosely knit group of members from secret societies to get its aims manifested. These societies range from the Brotherhood of Freemasons to magical societies such as the Rosicrucians, the Theosophists, and the Ordo Templi Orientis, to name a few. The Freemasons are the glue that binds all of the ruling institutions, corporations, and the banking system into one cohesive unit. This inclusion of the secret societies into the apex of the ruling powers keeps all goose-stepping in the same direction. As John D. Rockefeller stated, competition is a crime. So there is no real difference in the systems around the world. They're all going in the same direction. There's a lot of words being said in this day and age about freedom and the fight to gain it, which runs contrary to what is the reality that's occurring in the world today. Alice Bailey, 1880 to 1949, became a member of Helena P. Blavatsky's Theosophic Society, and then left in 1919 to create the Lucifer Society that changed its name later to the Lucis Trust, probably because of the bad rep that Lucifer has had. She claimed that she was in contact and being channeled to by the same Tibetan avatar as Blavatsky, namely Jwal Khul. Bailey was the author of many occult books, one being The 7 Rays of Initiation, where she thanks Franklin D. Roosevelt, her brethren and disciple, for anchoring the word freedom for the masses. Freedom in this society is impossible, so whether on the right or left, there would be calls for freedom. The people in a right-leaning society would look to the left, believing that freedom lay there, and the people on the left would look to the right, believing that maybe freedom lay there. They never found it, but their agitation did motivate the masses and give humanity the desire for change. The energy created from this desire, if carefully managed, and it has been, was to be used to follow the path of no return, which is the term that Theosophy uses for the mystery school's great work of the ages, or the religious order's God's work. At the time as FDR anchored the word freedom for the masses, a new socio-political idea took hold and became fairly popular in North America. This idea was technocracy. A fake engineer named Howard Scott began a technocratic organization. The idea behind technocracy is the creation of a society that was to be run on absolute scientific and mathematical principles. The technocrat wanted society to have a new economic system based on the usage of resources and for society to be fully automated. But due to the lack of the technology that would be needed to allow for this new society, Technocracy Inc. fell apart. The idea never disappeared fully and was resurrected when Zbigniew Brzezinski, Jimmy Carter's national security advisor, wrote the book Between Two Worlds in 1970. The concept in this book were based on technocratic theories and excited David Rockefeller, who saw the kind of society that he thought would give him and his elite friends absolute control of the entire planet. And this control would include absolute power over the entire human population. Technocracy is the antithesis to freedom. So how could the population be tricked into accepting it? Rockefeller and Brzezinski created an organization, a roundtable group called the Trilateral Commission. The Trilateral Commission was created to manifest the technotronic era. It's more powerful than the CFR or the Royal Institute in the UK. It works from behind the scenes. And many of the people in the CFR, the ruling people, the people who push, and in the Royal Institute, are also obviously members of the Trilateral Commission. In 1992, two new enemies for the human race appeared, and they were climate and overpopulation. And obviously, the human race itself could be blamed. The Rothschilds family hosted a UN conference on climate and population in Rio de Janeiro. It was decided that a new society based on sustainable development needed to be constructed. But what is sustainable development? Author, researcher, and host of the Technocracy Rising website, Patrick Woods, makes the observation that sustainable development is just another name for technocracy. And with the incredible technology that exists today, the technocratic wet dream is now possible. A comprehensive plan that was created at that time was known as Agenda 2021. It's now called Agenda 2030 and is the plan of the elites to manifest this absolute takeover and control of the world's resources and its human population. Their plan is technocracy, no matter what it's called now. An automated society run by technology with human automatons keeping the construction working perfectly. For this to happen, every human has to be microchipped and controlled from cradle to cradle. Now you know the reason for the death of freedom: absolute surveillance and suffocating control over the entire population. These elites know that in their vision of the brave new world, that the automation of society would not need 7 or more billion humans to manage society. And so the population needs to be culled, and for the survivors of the cull to be pushed into dystopian smart cities that have every electronic device, plus the chipped population, attached through the net to an artificial intelligence. The reasons for the rollout of 5G across the globe is because it is powerful enough to connect all those billions of devices and people to the artificial intelligence. The carrot for this incredibly dangerous system is money. Corporations and their lackeys gush about 5G and are using cognitive dissonance when it comes to the health and surveillance aspects involved. If only a few of the possible health problems that 5G is said to cause happens, then there should not be one sane person who thinks it should be rolled out. As for the surveillance aspect, what the fuck? How has the world come to this insane position? I don't really get with the word snowflake, but let's face it, we're in a blizzard at present. The technotronic one world order needs all nation states to be dissolved, while the races are also to disappear as well. It's important to note that the vaccination project, allied to a destruction of the production of nutritional organic food, will inevitably lower our immune system. Then it's a simple matter of a good virus or two, and the culling of humanity, otherwise known as useless eaters, according to war criminal Henry Kissinger, will be achieved. To destroy the races and the nation state is not a conspiracy theory, it's a fact. We should listen to the words of Richard Nicklaus Ejero, Count of Coudenhove Kalergi, November the 16th, 1894, July the 27th, 1972. He was an Austrian-Japanese politician and philosopher. He was one of the most noted pioneers of European integration and served as the founding president of the Pan-European Union for 49 years, which would be the preliminary ideological foundation of the European Union. Kalergi described his dreams for a one-world government with its foundation in the European Union. He hoped that the European project would go on to become the blueprint for a society run entirely by the global elite over a completely powerless population. He wrote that he wished to see the end of national sovereignty and self-determination, and he believed that nationalism, and indeed the very concept of nations, could be demolished through multiculturalism. He wrote that a society that was socially and ethnically diverse was one which was easily controllable by the political elite. According to Kalergi, a diverse and multicultural people were easy to control, as they had no common identity to rally behind in the event of a political crisis. In addition to that, a diverse population would be easy to conquer by the means of divide and rule. The newly arrived immigrants would be pitted against the native people with both sides believing that they were a persecuted minority, languishing under a system of law that was rigged against their favour. Over the years, the European Union has gradually eroded aspects of national sovereignty for nation states, often making national law subordinate to that decided by unelected figures at the head of the international organisation. There has also been a concerted attempt to chip away at nationalist sentiments and nation-oriented social projects by such policy decisions as freedom of movement and Angela Merkel's open door policy. Even the freedom that was thought to exist through the internet is now rapidly being taken away. Tech giants such as Google, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, etc. have all started to censor people for their views. As gatekeepers for practically all information, this is something that should terrify everyone who still has at least a couple of brain cells active. Universities that were once havens of free speech and free thought now attack free speech and free thought with a vengeance. Self-expression is now a dirty concept in this new world. And of course, if you don't hate yourself if you're white, then the social justice warriors will help you destroy your life. Crimes such as ideas that believe there may be biological differences between male and female are also punished by SJWs through life-wrecking attacks. Do the supposed social justice warriors know that they are doing the bidding of the global elites? Or are they so caught up in their own insanity that they cannot see their own culpability? I wonder if I've just committed a hate speech crime. I must say I don't care. The brave new world that despises individual or collective freedom is being created while we keep our eyes on our iPhones and tablets. It's the end of not only freedom, but the end of this species of humanity. I will close this podcast with the words of Madame Blavatsky, channeled to her from the Tibetan Jewel Kul and written in her seminal 2-volume set called The Secret Doctrine. We are the 5th root race of humanity. The 5 evolutionary steps that humanity has travelled were initiated by divinity or divine agents. But the 6th root race will be created by the 5th root race, us, with no divine help. And this new root race will be androgynous and have no free will. Open your eyes.